Hey, EOD operator, how are you? Good to have you on board. Good to see you, and thanks so much for your subscription. Looking forward to working with you, and hope you have some fun here today, as well as Caleb. Hey, how you doing, Kids Lab? Good to have you on board here, Doctor. We're just getting ready to start here. Give me a couple of minutes, and we'll wait for just anybody else to join in here and subscribe for 3 months. I really appreciate it. Hey, Chip, how are you? Welcome aboard here. Good to have you again. Captain Nemo, hey, by the way, all of you, thank you so much thus far for joining in. We're going to get started here in just a second. But before I begin, I just want to let you know that regarding the Captain Nemo, I really appreciate your series of messages I received last night. I didn't want to respond because I know it was about 4 in the morning in Germany, so I hope you got my message I returned today, Nemo. Thank you so much for your input. Really appreciate the time spent and looking forward to it. Thank you so much for helping me build my audience. So, without any further delay, let's get this thing rolling here, and I'm going to pick up some revision things here that we just started to do on yesterday's operation. For those of you who were not with us yesterday, we spent a lot of time going through the interior, exterior stuff of what we've been working on this far, and I think we're getting really, really close in fact, very, very close to coming to got it. Sure, no problem. Hey, thanks very much, Nemo. Chip, I'm in a meeting, so won't be as active as usual because I got to, not a, yeah, you better, Chip. That's a good move, so no problem whatsoever. But I think today I'm going to really concentrate on 2 things. I want to go through a little quick review here with you. Those of you who were not with us yesterday, like EOD, the operator, I just want to let you know that we started out with, we're finally getting down to the fine tuning of this machine, making a real genuine G12 series. And between now and next Wednesday, what I'm going to start looking at is doing a comparative package study between the original G12 and what we have here. Look at the scale differences between one and the other. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun to take a look at that. But the mission today is to really take a look at refining the interior, as well as maybe doing some little thumbnail sketches on what the rear quarter is going to look like. We've done a lot of investigating work on the front end studies and so forth and the overall appearance of the vehicle. But I think it's ample time now, a really good time spent to really look at the overall picture, inside, outside, front 3/4, rear 3/4, what it's going to begin to look like. Eventually, about a month away from putting together some really good, well, when do you see the revisions, operators are much, much better. So about a month away from doing some really good high quality print work and some model work of this machine, we're going to go into, I'm getting an individual that I worked with for a long period of time who's a master at third dimensional stuff. He's going to start doing some speed form studies for us. So that'll be a lot of fun to look at as well. So let's just go this quickly. I want to spend my time going through some sketch rendering stuff with you about them refining the interior, and you'll see why in just a moment here. This was a first pass, operator and everybody else. Yeah, I think the forms were there. We had some things happening up front. We kind of dropped the nose in just a little bit, and I think go back to Nemo's comment some time ago. A little bit too narrow here, so we eventually looked at that. This was okay, but it was a little bit busy, overbearing, so to speak, because it kind of took a lot of the character from the very simplicity of the forms and exaggerated the unnecessary elements here. Too much detail here. Opening up this system here with an intake scoop for the engine system, but I've discovered that in looking at it, I thought, it's a little bit odd because if you look at the elevation here, we're quite rearward. So moving this whole operation, that point of reference forward into the cabin area, much, much stronger. You see as we go here. So that's where we were. That was phase 1. We went from that illustration or that concept to this refinement here. Now notice, much, much cleaner. It doesn't have the cow catcher bit, but has a lot more of a really good, what I refer to as a dihedral catch, where you've got a lot of slope in this thing. It clicks under the machine, a little bit of a sliver underneath there, and a 2 intake concept into the braking ducts, for example. That'll really help operate the machine here. So notice again, we refined it a little bit, got some good information. Notice again, Nemo, we opened up that whole shark nose piece and just kind of spread it out a bit more to give us some operation to work with. That was very cool. This still was an issue coming. That was still too far rearward, so we want to bring that forward. And you notice in the elevation, and then we added a pant system back here as well. That just kind of complicated life. So each time we go through a series of generational changes, there's no question we're going to see some interruptions in terms of, oh, that worked and that does not work. But I think we're getting closer to the front end of the thing, and we've resolved this guy back here. But I think overall the stance looks really gutty. I mean, there's a proportion here that's really interesting as far as entry egress goes. You'll see in a moment how that's going to function. We spent some time yesterday as well going through some entry egress. For example, this whole canopy is going to pivot forward out of aircraft. So that'll give us some really good access into the loading the driver into the cockpit itself. Also used in the old IMSA and GT class, where you actually sit on the outrigger here and roll into the canopy itself. So we don't have to get a lot of fuss there, but we've got some good results here. Really like the fact that we cleaned up that whole cow catcher situation, operator. Let's see, because unfortunately my current area services, oh no, no way. Too bad about that, Caleb. Thanks very much for giving it a try anyhow. So here we are. That's where we were, second phase. Now, I just spent some time again after we went off the air yesterday. Went back in and said, maybe one more look at this area especially and what's happening up front here. So let's take a look at this third variation. So bear with me, folks. I really appreciate your patience. This is the third variation. Look at the difference now in the stance. All of a sudden, we've got some really interesting information happening here. It's really, yeah, thank you, operator. It's really interesting how, now look at what happens here. We widened this out a little bit more. Now it took the canards, if you notice, these canards on the right and left side of the cockpit, they were a little bit on the low side. Look at the, let's see if we can get a comparison here. It's one to the other. These canards in the upper piece, let me bring this in a little bit more, then we'll move on. These canards were a little bit low and it caused some disturbance in here, and it just looked a little bit odd. So that was one of the things I looked at in the revision of this phase right here. For example, now we dropped them a little bit, but put a little more uplift on this thing, so you're going right back into the shape of the form. So the airflow should be a lot cleaner. But again, the thing I want to stress is, look at what happens when you open up that nose cone a little bit more, just widen it out a little bit more, it gives you a little more stability in the body form itself. Changing the canopy of the glass. This is where the glass graphics would open up, and again, pivot point here and here. That thing comes forward out of aircraft, and you enter and away you go. Now we're cooking. Yeah, thanks very much, Nemo. I think it's really got some interesting stuff. And again, notice the modification here was really helpful, getting that duct to move forward and changing the entire stance of that corner, that elevation. It just looks much more sinister. Whoa, I love the lower windshield for just a low riding vehicle that would allow the driver to see what, yeah, absolutely. And that was the function behind it. This is all open here, operator. This one, and then all the way up. And there's a reason why that spar is there, and I'll show you in just a moment. That cross member, for structural reasons, is there, but it's also an informative piece as well. So we'll get to that in just a second. But again, the overall stance, I mean, this thing looks just really, it looks like if you just touch it, it would spring right open. It's under a lot of tension now, and I think that's a lot to do with your input, gang, coming in and saying, hey, this is really interesting. No problem, not a problem, operator. We're glad to have you on board. But I think that was this whole resolve has been, quite honestly, I mean, we can crank on all kinds of sketches and do this or that, and we go through variation 1, 2, and 3. But what I really respect the most, and I want to make this very clear throughout today's stream, what I respect the most is your interest and your input in this vehicle. Your input, your interests, your suggestions, your what if and how comes have really been very, very instrumental helping put this thing together. So I'm looking forward to getting it all put together. We start doing some really drop-dead illustration work that we did for that piece I did on Star Citizen, that live operation. Some really good color prints of this thing and do a model. Actually, I'm excited about doing the model. We're going to try a 10 scale process here. Not with a lot of detail. We're just going to call it a speed form. What does this look like in the third dimension? Because there's so many variations in this thing. For example, those of you, again, pardon me for being redundant here, but the survival cell falls inside here. There's a lot of airspace back in here, and the seating system follows that same contour. So there's a lot of little subtleties that are really interesting about this shape that, again, are going to dictate a very powerful form. And one more time, I'm really looking forward to spend some time this weekend doing a package comparison between what was happening. Were you able to consider my idea with the articulating? Yes, we are. That's going to be part of the process as well. We're going to take some of this stuff out, some of this out. We're going to put some of the gill systems either in here or also hold this whole body, interrupt that line and begin to put it right in through here. Very much under consideration, Nemo, no doubt. That's going to be another part of the process of refining this thing a little further, which was a great input. It reminds me a lot of Mako systems back in the Bill Mitchell era. Very cool. Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. So there we are with that stance. I think it just looks to me, and let me pause for a second. Do you agree or not that stance in the elevation looks just ultra aggressive? Low hunch, low profile, real powerful rear quarter where the business is, where the engine system is, and it looks just sinister. Agree or not? Well, we'll move along here. I think the whole. I think the bottom line stance here is that there's always something about the gesture. The gesture to me, again, perfect as you said. I'd like this spring open. But yeah, it is. It's one of those deals where the vision I had from the very beginning, folks, was when you walked up to this thing, it would just, if you touched it, it would just kind of explode under that much tension. There's a lot of thick thins, a lot of tension lines, hard edges against soft edges, a lot of counterpoint, which I think was really interesting. So enough said. Let's move along here. That's where we are with the current process in the exterior work. We're adding some gill systems. We'll keep refining this thing. I'm not quite, just a little bit fussy in here yet with some of the lighting systems. But we'll move into that with a lot of preparation and make sure we do the right thing with this thing. So here we go. Now into the interior. We started yesterday's stream. We went through this process where we had this very open cockpit kind of look. This cross member here kind of comes into play. But we initially had like a HUD system, aircraft system, and then this bridge across the front of the vehicle. You could see through that from the seating position. You could see through that area, and this is all airspace around it. But there was something about it that in my treatise in conversation yesterday was the fact that I wanted, from my point of view, and again, I was probably off base here, but what I kept seeing on the inside was this almost jet fighter approach instead of being a race car. And I think that caught up with me very quickly by getting a lot of busy stuff here. I think the hand controls were interesting, but we need to move them back. Let's get them closer to the seating system for reach purposes. So that's under contract here, under discussion. Some of the things, for example, these touch controls, they were not intended to be touch controls, but if we move them to that, they have to move rivet as well. So we get these guys back inside the canopy area, closer to the pilot itself. I would prefer to have this being much more readout systems as opposed to being touch, because all the touch controls are in here, like active arrow systems, control systems right and left, and braking and so forth. So all that fly-by-wire is in there. So that was the first pass at it. And then all of a sudden we came back and then went from there to now into this one. Well, what about this? Maybe we kind of simplify the whole shape. Notice how we've compressed. We've gotten rid of that HUD system, which was in here, and went to a visor system, like an overhead glass screen or display system coming off that spar. This is the fender line coming in off the form itself. And then we had a spar system in through here, and we cleaned up the whole area. So from a seated position back here, you see right through it and around it, and this is transparent as this is transparent. This is all informational stuff. Then back into the tunnel console with the drive system or the steering system involved with it. So, and then last one, just a little bit of a detail pulling that out of here, just the overall character of that whole information system as it wraps around the form itself. So I think we're a lot closer to being cleaner. I think we're a lot closer to being much more succinct with it and less congested and less jet fighter-like, but more of a business-like operation that really falls in line, hopefully, with some of the G12 stuff we've been working on in the past here. So with that thought in mind, we're going to take a minute here and just go back, and after looking at this system with this overhead clear panel digital display, this drop system, this visor system, and this control panel here being winged or all glass, then the tunnel console itself. I just want to take one more pass at this thing just to simplify the actual form itself. So here we go. We're going to take a look at this guy by doing the following here. Let's open this thing up. Let's get right back into business. Let's come back in through here. Pardon my hands here. I'm going to come right around the form. Let's get that center line of glass in place. There's my glass line right there. Just going to start building a real quick shape here, folks. So bear with me. So I'm going to come around the bend here. This is body side here as we come in into that body side. Let me turn that around just a bit and get that line to thrust through all right. There's body side there. Now we're going to come back into that little spar. The interesting thing is, you're not going to see a lot of this, but that spar is going to do this. It's going to come up, and it's going to come up and go over, and then come back down and land on the far side. Let's put that connector together here. There's the actual, that portion there that I just put in is now, pardon me again, I'll keep this handy. That portion that I just illustrated is this little system. That's a cross member in the glass itself. So it has two purposes really in the initial concept sketch. Its purpose is to be a structural member and at the same time information gathering or a telemetry system as well. So that, notice this line, that little curl right there, this thing drops off so quickly in the nose cone area that you won't see much in the front end as we go here. So let's do this. There it is. Let's come back in and build a bit of body in this thing here. There it is. There's that structural member going across the vehicle, down to that. Now notice, the daylight opening goes uphill, so we want to dramatize that by coming up and just really opening that whole line right up and just really bringing that uphill. We're going to open this thing up and then take that line back into that spike, which is in the outside of the vehicle, then come right back to the glass cut. There we are. That's the glass line right there. Up, back in the canopy, and then around that shoulder. So I'm starting to build this form from the outside in, so to speak, but we're going to use that as a shell. Let's bring this back. Let's get a little bit of surface in this thing, a little bit of substance to it. Let's bring that across. Run that right through, then begin to lose it over here. Now notice, this is what's neat. Now we come back in here. Here's that visor. It's now this, to that. That is now going to be suspended off of that spar, which now will look like this. There's a connector, and there's a connector. That floats off of that main system. Everybody with me so far? That's starting to build this thing. That's the information system that the pilot's going to see at about eye level, but as in between, when you start to build the rest of the shape, you'll see how they'll begin to see through the sliver and open up that whole sightline process for getting it done. So let me turn this around for a moment here, folks. Pardon me for rotating just a bit. Let's kind of take that line through. And by the way, when I finish this sketch today, if we get some yays and nays on this thing, what I'd like to do is kind of tune in a little bit, and for next week's stream, start tightening down and doing some really nice illustrations, some sketch rendering work on this thing to give some real character. We'll go to finals. Now, let's build this. Let's build the bridge. There we are. We're going to come off of this, off the center line, bring that through. Open this up. Open that up. Get into the foils. Let's get this guy here. Let's bring this over. Now we're starting to build the information systems. Real loose. I'm going to draw through it for a bit. Pick up that same intersection here. Draw that across. Get that piece to kick up. The kick down. Draw through. Pick up that tangent. There's the upper portion. There's a center line there and there. There's a break line here, but I'm not going to bring this up. Stop it. Bring that right through. That's a connector. Break that open. A little bit of surface to it. Put a little bit of body so it's a glass surface. That comes through. Does the following. Rolls in. Finishes the shape. Drops back in. Etc. over the top. Now behind that, there's another spar that comes in here. Let's just hold on for a second. Let me get this lined up here, guys. So far, so good. Am I communicating all right? And let me know if we're doing okay here, gang. So there I am. Let's put a section through this thing. I'm going to come off the cowl, which is the nose piece here. I'll show that surface-wise here. More yays from me. Yay, very cool. Nice. Outstanding. Thank you, Nemo. That really means a lot to me. Now we're coming in here. Going to break. Roll that in. Now, in through here, I'm going to sneak this thing underneath the shape a little bit. Let's kind of come back in here and do this. It's going to come back in, roll underneath, and again, pick up a little bit of shape here, a little bit of shape here, and roll underneath, and come right through the form. In the center line, cut underneath it, begin to break it, and then put a connector line in through here. We're going to come back off the cowl again, come back in through here, and build another substrate. Take that around, wrap it in. That's support. And then it just comes around, wraps in and support. But it also flies back and picks up that same belt line. That's going to really simplify that shape as it comes back in here. Notice it's all uphill now. And it breaks back down into this form here. And I'll get to that in just a moment. I'm going to bring that back inside the cockpit by doing that. That's going to come back in. So far, look at the stance of that thing. Is it making sense, gang? We're getting slimmer, we're getting simpler, and it's becoming much more refined. Much more refined. So here we go. Now let's get a connector here. Let's come back in through here. Let's begin to drop this guy. I'm going to come back through this thing, drop it in, bring it across, drop it in. Now, the most critical part of all, what happens to the pilot system here as you begin to look at this thing as we go? Well, let's do this. Let's come back in and pick up the secondary. It's going to come back in through here. We're going to miss this. This will be like a dead front up front. It'll pick up that area, drive through it, and it'll pick up that. And that begins to come back and pick up this shoulder right here. That'll come right through the shoulder and come right straight back. So notice we're starting to really take these forms that are very complicated and begin to simplify them down for two reasons. Not so busy, so we can concentrate on what's going on inside the cockpit or on the vehicle. And secondly, just not so cluttered, not necessarily all busyfied just for the sake of being busy. So here we go. Let's come back in through here. Now, this is interesting. Seating position. Let's put the seats in place. Come back into trim. I'm going to let that tunnel roll right into the seating system like we did in some of the other. I think it's critical. That comes back in and picks up some of the trim work. That softens off. This shoulder comes in and provides a substrate for the pilot to kind of lean against, and become part of the whole process of the sidewall of the cockpit. So we're building this thing from the point of view of being ergonomically sound, but at the same time really simplify it. So let's kind of put this together. I'm going to draw through this, come out of here, come right through it, and begin to build the rest of the form. Pardon me as I move this around. Come back to ground or floor. Pick up the second part of the bolster of the seat here, roll this back a little bit, and then pick up that same whole form right in through here. Bolster, thread, bolster, thread. That's the seat in place. Look at the difference in the simplicity there. I'm going to stop right there. Is this making sense, gang? So far, so good? I mean, after all, you're really going to be very critical in putting this whole piece together here. Well, thank you, Chip. So far, so good. Let's break it up a little bit further. Let's come across here and let's break up this mass. That comes up, that dives underneath, it comes out, comes out. There might be a connecting break here. We can put that into place, so that'll come down and actually do this. That'll break. That'll pick up a real spike in this line here. Will give us a little bit more aberration to work with. That'll come across here. That now will come in and pick up the same form. And again, what's really cool about this, we're going to come back in through here. Be a rotary adjuster. That could be dihedral effect, but it's a rotary dial. We can actually control the dihedrals, front and rear. So far, so good. Now, the really neat part is, now we're there, let's do this. Got this. I'm going to cut here. Watch this. This is where we're going to start really getting interesting here. Controls. And controls. Into the center line, into the joystick, separation around it, and back into that area right there. So let's kind of put this in place. That comes down. Pardon me, as I move the paper around here, I'm just trying to build as we go here. That comes in, does this. There's my, now this comes down and does this. I have a little more depth in this thing. I have a little more decoration to it. We could do that, like a pivot point in through here. That would be helpful. I don't know. We'll just see what that looks like. And if we can change it, we can change it. Again, over the top, very round. There's one part of the pistol grip right there. That's going to be one where I'm going to grip this beauty. On the other side here, I am. I'm going to project this across, and get that second one in place. Now, since it's on an angle, we're not going to see much of it. I'm actually going to do more of that. Oops, let me move that on. Is that making sense, gang? Oh, you can't hear me? Is that better, Chip? Hope I didn't lose the audio. I think the audio is good. The microphone's on there. Hope that's going to be all right. Here we go. And that picks up the same thing, same set of surfaces and forms. So just going back in through here. That does that. That rolls around, comes back into this whole cavity. That goes back into the corner, into the corner. This rotary piece now sits there. That does it. It comes across here. That's going to come across here. Hey, it's not on your side, Doc. I can hear. Okay, very good. Thanks very much. Let's move along here. Keep breaking this surface up. A little telemetry display up front. We're going to drop that in. So just the window. Let's get the tunnel console broken up here. Let's come back down here with a whole series of a bank of really interesting rotary switches. Things that you can control by hand here. We're going to go 1, 2, 3. Switch, toggles. Some really tactical stuff here. So it's not all fly-by-wire. There's some real tactical stuff going on in here. That yoke style is great. Yeah, I think that's what's neat. You're coming back up here with, when I'm not sitting in here, I've got those guys right in front of me, and I'm really going to be kind of hold the idea of putting it all together. So let's kind of detail this guy a little further so it's not so scratchy. There it is. That rolls in. There's my center line. There's the actual grip portion here as it comes around. That breaks in and breaks on again. And that comes right back up to this circle area, and it comes right back into that corner. Comes right back into that corner. So a little bit of a cavity here. Why? Because of the flexibility. Let's put that other line in there. But there it is. There it is. Here's trim. There's a resolve into the seating area here. Pardon me as I move the pad around just a bit. Let's kind of beef this up just a bit. We're down to this landing area here. Now in through here, off to one side, series of warning lights. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Take that spike into almost like a matrix of some sort, little wiring device that gives me some information in the vehicle itself. So let's kind of roll this back a little bit more. Let's roll this in the floor and tie it right to the base of the seat. So there we are. We're getting some bulk in this guy. And let's kind of do this. Let's kind of soften this off just a bit. So we're kind of determining where that guy is. And that rolls in. That rolls in. And again, and through here, that rolls off that. There's my surface here. And into surface. I come out of this again. Let's go back into this. There's the rest of the, just put the pillow in place. There's the seating location. All of a sudden, that thing's starting to come together, gang. What do you think? Does this have USB-C port or two? Yes, it does. We'll make sure we graph that in there too. So there I am. I'm going to draw through that. And this is my construction drawing here, folks. Keep in mind, I'm putting together a thesis here based on previous information about what we've done in the past. But this guy, for example, the one that was so busy, let me dig this out here. Hey, Chip, is that better sound-wise now? You okay? So the yoke styles, look at the difference in the character here. There's where I was. Notice how it's pretty expansive. Now, in this case, yeah, it's still opened it up. It's a lot more compact and it's a lot more simplified because it really takes an interesting turn of events here to get it all put together. So let me do this. Let's get this guy. Let's come back in and finish off some of these surfaces. Pardon me as I move the pad around here a little bit. I come downhill. I'm going to break that over. Come back in again with just surface breakups. Not so much cosmetics here, but just enough to say, all right, this is where I am. Now down through here, I might want to put some sort of a rotary guide. Let me put that in place there, just a little bit of touch there. That comes over, that comes over. Networking. Now let's go back in and pick up some of this stuff. Let's go back in the sidewalls here. And let that dive into that. Now we're putting some real simple sidewall materials here because the section change is going to be really interesting. I love the minimalistic clean. Yeah, me too. It's so much better. So much better, Nemo. You got it. So let's do this. Come across. Come up. Let's break that line up. Let's break this right into another scenario. This comes back and does this. I'm going to get a couple of temperature pieces here. For outside modules, exterior modules. What that's going to do, another bank here to break this up, put a little bit of a system in it. Come back underneath that again with a little patch piece here. Down to the floor level. A secondary piece coming out that line. I'm going to break it again. A little bit of hood on it. Come back in and break that through. Since it's transparent, we'll see a little bit of that through that area, just very lightly. This could all be, again, statics, communication systems. Who knows? Just a nice series of bank of interesting things to deal with here that are much, much simplified. Let's do this. Yeah, look at that. What do you think, gang? Making sense? I think we've got a real good formula here to keep it nice and clean. Still have the same kind of impact. Pardon me as I rotate this thing out here just for a second. Let me finish this sidewall out here. There it is there. There it is there. Now we won't see much of that happening in through here. We'll pick a little bit of that body side, so how confined this is. That's going to roll in and begin to pick up a secondary wall right about there. And that's going to repeat itself on that side. So look at the shelf we're creating in there. So this shelf comes down, breaks in, comes out, and gets much closer to the pilot. So that whole thing is going to come off the contour itself. And again, breaking that same section is going to come through here and just break right into a nice, simple, big, huge shelf that kind of contains all the information this guy needs to have to command the vehicle itself. So that whole idea now, yeah, a lot of expanse on the outside, but a lot of confinement on the inside. So I think we're making some good progress here. And probably I just want to clean up my mess here. I hate to use erasers, but I hate the cluttered lines, so I want to make sure we're communicating all right. All right, let me stop right there just for a second. That line carries on. That line carries on. We've got this line coming through. That's my secondary, no problem. Here's my body section. This is all body side coming into the form itself, into that shape here, down into that contour. Again, and that buries itself right there. I'll bring this back to square in just a moment. There I am. Look at that, gang. So far, so good. Just a nice, big, open expanse. Interesting how it all begins to function here. So let's go back in here, just send some lines in. Now let's deal with this guy. Some detail in this. just fogging in some information pieces there in that whole panel area as we go. So let's go back to this guy and split this beauty up. Come across into intersection. This could be a telemetry plot line, some sort, or course description, where he is on the track itself. That could be all very part of the whole process, where he is station-wise. Tire pressure, things that are interesting in terms of looking at what has to take place. Over here, a series of modules. Let's kind of split that just a bit so it kind of articulates it. So this goes on through. It's now going to be broken up in the opposite direction. We come back with that same split line through this into a nice big round on that surface itself. That could be all compass, directional. Again, information up on top, and a series of what's happening front quadrant, split line, rear quadrant. What's happening with tires and so forth, or exhaust and so forth. So the whole idea is to get this guy to get really, really super simple. Now let's come back up on top here. This thing actually leans forward. So if I were to cut a section through this, it's doing this. There's the center line of my vehicle right there. It drops back, and that piece leans forward. It's right at the driver, so you can see right through it. That, on the other hand, could be something as simple as just modulation. Overall vehicle systems, analysis, function, non-functioning. We'll put into those pieces as we go here, as we go down the line here. Let's come back into this. Let's tighten this down just a bit. I'm just loosely putting in what I call like a skeleton sketch to find out what we want to do with this tunnel console. And we'll start adding more definition to it once we find out what we want to add to it. Let's build that back into the seat. Let's come across with this guy. Let's put a couple more toggle switches in here. Very necessary, I think. That's something more tactile. Bring that right down the line. There's a whole bank of things you can kind of look at and say, okay, I want to shift from right to left. I want a more active arrow on the rear end. I want to open up the flaps. I want to really exhaust the thing. I want to really thrust down on it. A lot of activity inside the form. Turn this upside down just for a second, gang. Pardon me. Let's roll that section through. Let's get this section to mirror right here. That form comes through. That section there mirrors what's happening up over here on this side. So there we are. That's a pretty good rough sketch. Let me kind of clean this up. Sorry if my hands get in the way here, guys. That cleans up a pretty interesting approach to what we've done. Especially what I'm really pleased about is, I don't know if you agree or not, but there's just something about the transition from that, which is it's interesting, but it's just too much clutter. Now we've gone from that to that. And now let's just do this. Let's put a little bit of this to it. Let's just come back in here. And it's going to pick up a spot of reference here. Let's do this. It's a little bit of vertical. And again, come across here. Let that fade in there. Just to do a little rough wash study here, just for what it's worth. It'd be kind of cool to say, all right, what happens here? Let's do this. Let's just look at something here. Just kind of put a little bit of surface in this thing. I'm going to come back to this guy. Maybe it's just a touch of this. A little value study here. Slowly but surely, start to put some form together. What do you think here, guys? We need a switch for the double. Yeah, there you go. Double exhaust. That could be the real big. That could be this one right here too, Nemo. That could be kind of like a rotary. Very interesting. Cool. All right, so let's go back and through here, and let's just do this. I'm going to plug in just some variants here and see what you think. We're going to come around here. This might be a little bit of a chord system here that can come in and do the following. We have an information ribbon up front. I'm going to end it there. That's to that. I'm back in there and display what this view is going to look like. Pardon my silence, guys. I'm just trying to concentrate on where we are here. It's a real rough sketch to kind of help me put together the patchwork on this guy when we start to put the final pieces in the illustration itself. A little more detail in through here, a little more detail in through, a little more tone change away from the light source. A little bit of tone change there, let it fade. Same thing here. There's a little bit of a dusting to tell us where the trim level is. And again, a little sidewall study. Cool stuff. This is a lot of fun, guys. Hope this, I'm not moving, I'm probably moving around. I just want to make sure we get the right control in some of this stuff. And we'll just touch a bit of this. Might not change color, but might go to grays, but just for the time being, we've got that out. Let that saddle kind of walk in there just a bit. Very loose, quick and dirty, but nonetheless, give me a little sense of what that whole environment's going to look like. There we are. Oh, Copic time. We need a switch. Yeah, it's Copic time. Just, I mean, that's a pretty rough go around there, guys. Sorry for the quick study here. But if we come back in and just kind of put together just enough music in this thing to kind of see what we're going to get into here. A little bit of detail over top of that, into that. And again, maybe just a touch more of, get a lighter gray here. Yeah, let's go back to this guy. Put that hand control in place so we see what that's going to, that's too light. Let's get that thing to really read here. Come back to this. Very loose study here. I mean, I just really appreciate the fact you've been patient with me. Look at that. Is that the overall effect? What do you think, guys? We got some substance in this or not? Oops, pardon me. I'll move it over here just a bit. What do you think? Coming along all right? Well, a lot more definition once we get into the rendering side of this thing. I just want to come back and clean up just a bit here, guys, so we're not losing some of the surfaces that we're actually dealing with here. Comes over the top, drives through. Haven't lost a lot of that same character. It's a real rough what-if study here. If we look at some of the work we're dealing with here, there she is right there. Looks cool. Yeah, I think we've got some, yeah, again, there's a lot of things we can deal with here. I might kind of compress this a little bit more, but I think the overall shape is there, guys. There's just something about this that really looks like we've got some business-like operation to work with now. And again, from the seated position back here, you're going to be able to see right through that area. So this drop-down panel is, even though it looks pretty low in the elevation, it really kind of comes up on top. So it's really interesting how the proportions are coming together nicely here. So let's do this. So there I am. There's a little refinement on the interior. And I think we're going to really see, hopefully, some really good some matchups with this guy right here. Let me go back to this exterior just for a second here. Look what happens here. Here's the exterior. And there's the interior. If I can get them together on the same screen. Pretty close, I think. Hope. No, not really. Well, yeah, a little bit. Notice, again, this surface here is very instrumental. That's where that strut system is in the interior. That's the support member for that. All of that happens off, this slides right underneath it into that area. It drops down on the nose piece, comes up, hills back in, and we'll show that in detail form once we start doing some more detail work on the actual concept of the interior itself. So there's a rationale behind these elements on the outside that we're using tools on the inside. And again, the real thrust from this list, from this interior piece, is to bring all of that information further rearward so we can get to a touch control system or a much more manageable control system itself, then move into another area where we actually use that whole process to open up the whole. Again, you won't see much. That whole front end stops right there. I mean, that thing rolls right off of that once you look at the difference here. If I'm sitting back here, that sight line drops away once I see what's taking place in the actual cockpit itself. So again, some things to work with here. We'll take a look at maybe coming back in and doing some refinement stuff here, just kind of put a little bit of scratch to it. I mean, this is a real rough study here based on what we're looking at from refining this guy. And I think we've made some great progress, thanks to you all, again, on putting together the pieces here. But there is one thing, let me put this off to one side for a second. There's one thing I really want us to work with as well. And I went ahead just to wrap the stream up here today. Now, let me stop there for a moment. And get any feedback from you all. Anybody out there, anything you want to add, look at, analyze, insert, feel free to just, again, please keep in mind, this is but a rough study. We're just looking at a balance system here to get things going from the inside, interior, and exterior. I'm sure we'll refine some of these areas as we go. We get more information, we'll get much more tuned in, and I'll finish up, try to do the best I can for next Wednesday to do a real nice tight drawing of this thing and really get into a nice rendering system so it's not so scratchy. This, for me, was just a theme field. Do we have the right character? Do we have the right area? Do we have the right system for graphics and so forth? And I do think, Nemo, from my point of view, this looks like it belongs much more in a G series as opposed to being a jet fighter. It has that same kind of origin character to it. Maybe I'm wrong here, but please let me know. So far, so good, gang? How about you, operator? You still with us? Yeah, there we go. I'm digging it. Very good. Thank you. Definitely the driver's seat and the dashboard makes it. Yeah, I think the driver's seat, where we're located there, and the hand controls, a little more defining at the, to look at that, Nemo, a little more definition, look at maybe get ergonomically sound on some of the grip systems. But I do think we have something really valuable in terms of where the reach is now. We can actually much more accessible just to kind of get it all put together. Much more powerful in terms of use. So I think we're getting much, much closer. So thanks for your input. Super. And let's see. I love the early 85X in Maryland. Yeah, yes, I have. Interesting stuff. Very interesting. So thank you for the reference there. So now we've got that. I think one thing we didn't do, and let me just put this aside from, I'll bring it back in a moment here. One thing we didn't do, I jumped ahead of time here. I think one of the things we really haven't looked at here just some interior studies, or exterior rear studies. I mean, I did a couple of pencil roughs here, and I think based on the overall consensus of the exterior, I think the interior we're going to look at here, pardon me, the exterior, the rear three quarters, I still really think it should be a little bit more of a counterpoint. And again, I'm to get your input on this stuff. But notice phase one is to get that. There's that shoulder that comes in. There's that driveline that comes through, and then rounding it off at the back, just and then this whole huge nacelle underneath it. To me, would be an interesting approach. There's another one where you kept it pretty square to the world, then dropped the nacelle out, and then it got real soft and organic with a couple of relief vents for the interior stuff to kind of roll through here. So those are two that I think we looked at. But I think let's try something here. Let's do a couple of real quick sketches here. If I come back into this guy, in the center line, draw through it, and come back in and pick up where those pieces are going to go. I'm just building a shape here, guys. So as we come into this thing, it drops, comes in, it lifts. There's a little bit of a, well, we could go that route. Let's kind of finish off where that line comes in. That comes in and does this. That line comes in and does the following. So there's my basic envelope right there. That's the actual substrate itself off the rear quarter. The upper one you like, the round one? Yeah, me too. I think that's kind of cool. Thank you, Nemo. It has so much more business-like to it. So if we extend that and rotate this out and get that center line in place and roll this in, just to get real organic with this thing. And the element of surprise, there's the bone line here. There's the bone line coming off the vent itself, the intake. And the rest of the vehicle does this. It just drops right off. Man, look how cool that is. That just comes off. And then here's my upper. There's my canopy, and it rolls away. That's all I'm going to see. I mean, look how much drama there is in that. Man, that's cool. There it is. There, that drops in. Pardon me. That comes back and does the other thing here. Yep, there we go. Now, if I draw that through, and I begin to build a block here, that to that, then I come back in through here, and I just save that area right there for some maybe rear lamping and so forth. And draw that across, get that into place. Now come out of here at center line and really roll this thing out. Now I notice I've got to put that in place. Now I'll have that in place. There's my margin. You won't see an awful lot of, you'll actually see this much. What I've toned in here. Oh, a little bit lower. That's about what we'll see. Just again, real loose sketches. That comes in and builds that up. All right, might want to go a little bit more vertical with that. There we are. And a little more reverse with that. All right, come off of that cut line, and there, into that flap area. There you go. Something of that nature right there. Very interesting. That rear quarter view is that Bird of prey, yeah, it really is. Bird of prey look, that's very interesting. Great observation there, Nemo. So again, that's one way to look at it. And let's go back and do maybe just one more shot at it here. But I am going to be investigating this whole rear quarter look here. But I think in the presence of that kind of has a nice character to it. Almost looks really evil-like. It's very simple. And it's an element of surprise too. It's got a real round rear end and a very blunt off front graphic on that guy. So I think that's got some real merit to it. I'm losing my lid here. There we go. Oh, I know what's wrong. I got a juice. Hang on a second there, guys. We're almost there. Think. Nope, not a stick. Now let's go back and switch gears here. Yeah, let's try this. See if this one still functions. Here we go. So now we've got this guy. We're backing through here. Let's drop this in. Let's get that forward. Let's get that drive line right in there. That drops off. That drops off. That drops off. Little space allocation here. I don't know, is it singular? Do we split it up? Anyway, there you are. What do you think, gang? I keep envisioning the rear end of the G12 with almost heat sink look. Yeah, Yeah, that's a good point too, operator. That's very cool. That rear quarter view has the bird of prey. Yeah, I think that's. I still want to go back to something like this. I think there's something really melodic about that approach right there in the rear three-quarter. Move that on the area here. I mean, something about getting a little rounder with it, a little crisper with it, less geometric, because everything else is so hard edged, so to speak. But coming back in and rounding it out, and this isn't bad. But I think the whole idea, but to get that very voluptuous kind of a, and don't see it here as much. But to get that really interesting rolled section where you've got this coming off a very low circle and this kick up coming back into place, and again across the way, up again, and getting that whole idea to really kind of ramp home, to me is really interesting how that shape right there could be really nicely resolved and putting enough lighting in there to just kind of fight it off. And then again, as you come back into the rest of the vehicle, let's do this. Look what that starts to do. It's just a fast little gesture there, guys. Sorry about that, but nonetheless, look what that does. See what we're doing there? That just goes right through the form. That could really be cool. So again, that whole idea of getting this thing to round out a little bit and be a lot more aggressive. And it comes through, that comes through, and we get this great big, huge, big, large splitter back here that really does the job for us. Interesting. So that's a little walkthrough on paper replacement. Yeah. Just really interesting how it all begins to come together. But I think the idea of getting, again, something, let's go back just with that rear wheel in place and that spine line coming through, and then that being so much more accentuated where you carry that whole round surface right on through the form itself. It'd be really dramatic. I think there's just something about that really tells a story for us. So all that to say, gang, I really appreciate the time here today. Let's go back and review some things here. Let's wrap it up with just we've really not really talked too much about the rear quarter area. This still has some evilness about it. I think there's some potential there. I'm not so fancy for. How do you feel about this? This had a little bit of a catwalk on it where it drops down, it comes over, drops down, it comes into the normal surface. I'm not sure that's the way we want to go. I think the cleaner the better, just so nice and round, and let those tie lines come in and pick up the rhythm for us. Another variation on theme here was to go back to that, where we actually get a little squarer with it, and then again pick up the round. Nice gesture back here. I think there's something about that round area that just kind of puts all the thrust forward in the form itself. So, and then this is a little study of it here. So we'll keep those for future reference. I'll start doing some work on that next week, maybe on a Wednesday stream. And again, the most important thing was to get something down here with, again, I think, let's go real fast review here. This is where we were with the exterior. I think much stronger. There's the exterior now coming together nicely. It's got some really good solid approach to it. And then again, doing a little bit of an interior study. That's where we were with the interior. And again, busy, yeah, got the job done, but still a lot of complications, still not a little bit too further forward, but bringing it all rearward and coming back with this thing and tightening it up a little bit and getting some really nice, much more ergonomically crafted approach to it. This is a very rough sketch, so please forgive me. It's just a simple, are we on the right wavelength with this visor system, this drop-down telemetry piece, and then also the glass, very clean, simple wraparound form that occupies the cockpit. Then again, the actual drive mechanisms and steering apparatus right around the seating and so forth, much improved. So that's where we are today, gang. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Any comments from the gang out there in closing here? Please feel free to speak up. I mean, I really appreciate your input. Very good, operator. Thanks very much. We have a long way to go yet. I think I'm looking at this now. We might tighten this down a little bit more, but I think we've got the basic premise for a really interesting cockpit. Maybe this whole sidewall has to come in, just maybe touch the side screen and so forth. We're kind of compressed, but I think the uphill graphics and the glass system, this and all the pieces are coming together nicely. So thanks very much, operator. Thank you so much for being on board here today. It means an awful lot. Looking sharp. Thanks, Chip. Hope the sound worked out better for you. What do you think, Captain Nemo? Were you ready to fire away at this thing or not? I'll just hang on here for a second before we wrap it all up for the end of the day here. looking forward again to this new schedule change, which is really interesting. For example, instead of going Monday, Wednesday, Friday, this is evil in a good way. Yeah, I think it is too. I think that's it's a good way to describe it. And that was the premise. You recall, Nemo, and the rest of you all who were tuning in, and when we started this whole process, we wanted that very simple, evil look that looked like more like a GTR car. And I'm not complaining about the Origin G12. I mean, it has its statement to make, but it wasn't really a racer, so to speak. So I think we really want. Our whole effort has been to get this thing in more of a real wicked look in terms of proportions and scale, and make it more of a GT series, which I think we've accomplished thanks again to your input. So we're getting a long way here. So my plan now for the next few days is to really tune in on the exterior, refine the interior, look at the rear three-quarter, and by next week, by next Wednesday, for example, hopefully in our stream, we'll have some really good, interesting, good line drawings to put some really good illustration work behind it all, and begin to move into a really nice series of presentation materials for things to look at on our website for sale and so forth. Now, last but not least, a couple of announcements. Please be advised that I'll be going Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday now. Tuesday's 1:30, Wednesday's 4 p.m. as usual, and then again on Thursday 1:30 like we did today. I just think it'd be better to go day by day to keep things very consistent. And a little note, I talked to our guys this morning about the printing situation. The drawing book is about ready to go, and I'm working on another one called Genesis, which is all about illustration and conceptual rendering stuff. So that'll be kind of coming along on board as well. So I want to keep you posted on that. That's going to be coming very soon. I just looked at the roughs. Monday of this week? It looks really good. We cleaned up a lot of the graphics in the sketch rendering book, or the sketchbook itself, basic drawing skills, and it really looks good. So again, thank you so much for your time. As I've said all the time with each one of you, I really appreciate your being here. Thank you again. I would really, if I've done something right, tell me. If I've done something wrong, tell me. But I'm really interested in building this whole audience. So please spread the word. Captain Nemo, you've been very kind to do that. Operator, and also Chip, just boys and abroad, that what we're doing, I want to make a difference for people who want to really make a statement with design and drawing and sketch rendering skills and the like. I'm not going to be the difference, but I think just little things here and there we can help along the way. That's the task. So please, noise abroad that we're familiar, and we're on board Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. And last but not least, please take a moment to look at my website, drcontrast.com. The other news is we're working on a store there for print work and publications and so forth. All these pieces are coming together, and thanks to you all for being loyalists and coming along and working with me on these days. It really means a lot to me. So hope you have a great weekend. Take care of yourself, and I always close off with this because I think it's really important for all of us to know this, and I really believe this with all my heart. Never forget to remember to dare to be great, because you are. Have a great day. Thanks for joining in, gang. Take care of yourself, and all the very best. Thank you.